We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callTW.
So you think that you can tell us how to live our lives, never questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder what will it take for you to start opening your eyes? I wonder.
Hey everybody, welcome. It is Sunday, September 19th, 2021. I'm Matt Dillahunty, your host for today, and joining me, wow, it's been a little while, my friend Mandisa Thomas. How are you?
Hey, I am doing great. Very glad to be back on the show, especially with you, Matt. It has been a while.
We did the Sunday show not too long ago, but man, it's been a while since we've done AXP, and hopefully we get good calls, and hopefully there are theists waiting to call in, because man, lately it's been like pulling teeth to try to get theists to call in, despite the fact that evidently, according to some people, I've gone soft and am nicer than I've ever been, and now they're just even more afraid. It's like I'm laying a subtle trap that they're unaware of. But
Well, apparently you're nicer when I'm on the show, so
I
we'll
always
see.
I'm in a better mood when you're around, which you can attest is the truth, even when we're not on air, because we've had some good times. You've got something coming up that we wanted to talk about real quick at the beginning.
Absolutely. So this coming weekend from September 24th through the 26th is the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference, which is co-produced by Black Nonbelievers, Black Skeptics Group, and the Women's Leadership Project. And registration to stream online is open. We want as many people to stream it and support it as possible. We'd love to get at least 1,000 people to tune in. It's $25 for regular admission to stream and $10 for students. So, and of course, I am here as always representing Black Nonbelievers as an organization. We are a nonprofit 501c3 that elevates the voices and provides community support for Blacks who are atheists and our allies. And so I really appreciate everyone who supports us, who has supported this conference. We really, really could use more of your support. Shout out to the Freedom from Religion Foundation for being one of the major sponsors for this event.
Absolutely.
And we just really, really, I have to put some respect on everyone who just, who really, really does support the work that we do here at Black Nonbelievers. And we absolutely love our allied and partnered organizations for that support and the people who support us.
Absolutely. And I think we've got a promo.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Mandisa Thomas, inviting you to the 2021 Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference. This monumental event, which features all women of color speakers, activists, and authors, will take place from September 24th through the 26th in Chicago, Illinois. Speakers include yours truly, Sakivu Hutchinson, and the nonprofit's own Cynthia McDonald. In-person registration and online streaming options are available. Please visit WOCBeyondBelief.com for ticket information, student discounts, and sponsorship opportunities. Women of Color Beyond Belief is proudly presented by Black Nonbelievers, the Black Skeptics Group, and the Women's Leadership Project.
Yes, so since that promo that has since changed, we are now only offering online streaming registrations. We do want to make sure that everyone is safe and is also able to view the conference from the safety of their homes if they so choose. So please tune in. We have some wonderful speakers. If you just watch the nonprofits, you saw Cynthia on there, and she is going to be live at this event.
Absolutely. I tell you what, there's a bunch of other announcements, but we're not going to mess with any stinking announcements right now. We're going straight into calls. And fortunately, we've got Theus already ready to talk to us. As a
All right, let's
reminder,
go.
there is an issue with delay. I'm going to do my best to ensure that everybody exercises patience, and we may have to put people on hold on occasion so that we're not yelling over each other. But Sam in Texas, thank you for calling in. You wanted to tell us a little bit about why you believe in God and maybe why we should.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing, Matt? Mandisa. Anyway, the reason why I'm calling is just basically, just trying to make this simple for you. Is the reason why I believe pretty much is the same reason why you believe. And I mean, it's human nature to believe. Now, I'm not going to, call to give
you want to elaborate on that, please, Sam?
Yeah, because if you say the reason you believe is the same reason I believe, well, I don't believe.
Right.
Not in a God. I believe in other things. So clearly your reason for believing in God can't be the same as mine. So why do you believe and why should we believe?
No, you're not hearing what I'm saying. Is the reason why I believe is the same reason why you believe. It's because you don't believe there's a God. I believe there's a God. So we're both believers. You just don't believe there's a God, and I believe there is a God.
Okay.
Sam, if I may interject, which God do you believe in? Can you answer that?
Yeah, there's also a problem here in saying, if you say that you have cancer in the same way that I don't have cancer, we're not talking about the same thing. You are convinced that a proposition is true, and I am not convinced that it's true. So nothing about our reasoning is the same. So rather than just saying I'm not hearing you, why don't we try to start again? Maybe answer Mandisa's question and tell us why you believe and why you think we should.
Can we stay on topic? Do you have cancer? No. Do I have cancer? No.
Sam?
We're here talking about
Sam?
It's as simple as that. Yes, go ahead.
Great. So I'm going to put you on hold for a second. We are staying on topic. Whether or not I have cancer, that's an analogy. And I'm showing that the type of argument that you're using, the thing that you're saying, is not actually sensible. When you say that you believe in God for the same reason that I don't, that is not sensible. And that's the thing I was trying to make clear with an analogy. And so all I'm asking is for you to explain why you believe in a God and why you perhaps think we should believe in a God as well.
Okay. Let's first start with the definition of belief. Is belief equal to God? Belief is just a belief. That's a word, belief.
Okay, Sam, I'm going to pause you and mute you again. If we're going to start by defining terms, let's start by defining them sensibly. If you say, first of all, I'd love a definition of God, but if you say, what is belief? Is belief equal to God? Well, that's nonsense because none of us are saying that. Belief is the condition of accepting a proposition as true or likely true. It means that one is convinced of something. You can't define belief by calling it a belief. You have not actually added anything to it. So,
Matt, I'm trying to reason with you guys. Can we just,
I don't believe you, Sam, because you're not listening and you are saying things that are absurd. I'm starting to think that you are a prank caller. So would you explain to us why you are convinced that a God exists and why you think we should be, or I will just move on to somebody else who will do that.
The simple reason I believe God exists is for the exact same reason that you believe that he don't. It's human nature to believe.
No, I'm sorry, Sam, but simply saying that, so you might as well be saying, I believe you don't, that's that. Well, that's not a reason. It's not an explanation. It doesn't offer any justification for accepting a proposition. It doesn't do anything to edify any of us on the subject at all. What convinces you that a God exists?
Matt, just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean you need to disagree with everything I say.
Sam, just because I'm an atheist doesn't mean you need to disagree with everything I say, but because I'm the host of this show, you will answer the question that you're asked or we'll move on to someone else. Why are you convinced that a God exists?
Look, my goal here wasn't to give you...
Sam, are you going to answer my question or are you going to keep avoiding it to tell me what your goal is and whine about how you think you've been mistreated?
Well, because obviously you just don't want to listen. So,
Sam, Sam, I've been hosting a TV show for 16 years where I debate people on a regular basis. If you would present a reason why you believe that is sensible, evidence-based, or anything else, I'm happy to listen. But I'm not happy to listen to you whine, and I'm not happy to listen to you keep going on about you believe for the same reason I don't believe, because that's bullshit.
Why?
Well, first of all, you can't say that you believe for the same reason I don't believe, because that is like saying you have cancer for the same reason I don't have cancer. I'm sorry if analogies are difficult for you, but I don't know how else to explain it. Are you going to present a reason why you believe, or are we going to go on to another caller?
Well, that's what I was getting to. But
no, sir, it's not. And if you do not get to the point
to believe,
immediately, I will reach the conclusion reasonably that you are a bullshitting prank caller, and I will hang up on you and move on to someone, because I take this stuff seriously. This isn't a joke to me. If in fact there is a God, it's the single most important question that anybody could ask. And I resent the fact that you and punks like you call in to do this over and over again, to act as if you've said something when you know damn good and well you haven't said anything. So why do you believe in a God? That's all I've asked. That's what I've been asking as politely as possible from the instant you called. Either get to your prank call, name calling, whatever it is you're going to do, so I can hang up on you, or make your case for God, or I will hang up on you.
The more I listen to you, Matt, is the more I feel sorry for you.
Goodbye, sir.
Wow, gee.
You should feel sorry for me, because I have to take calls from people like you, because some of us are honest interlocutors and some of us are not. I should be pitied for having dedicated my life to doing my best to actually have conversations, to engage with people, to try to be sensible. As a matter of fact, I did a debate just the other night that was absolutely atrocious. A neurosurgeon demonstrating how one can be incredibly smart and gifted at neurosurgery, and an arrogant, dismissive prick and seemingly unknowledgeable about all kinds of other things, just calling me names the whole debate and everything else. It was obnoxious. But rather than sitting there whining about it like Sam does as a caller, I just waited and then did a closing that addressed it all. I would love, I apologize, Mandisa, because we didn't get to say anything. Neither of us got to do anything. I'm going to do the announcements in just a second, but I want to start the show off a little better. If you're out there right now and you're a theist, you are someone who genuinely believes that there's a God. Do you think that Sam was a good representative of you? Do you think Dr. Egnor was a good representative of you? If not, why haven't you called in? I know that if you go back through these calls, you will find many occasions where myself, my fellow hosts and co-hosts, have had lengthy conversations with people who are sincerely presenting their justifications, even when we think those justifications are nonsense. But if you're just going to call in to waste time, we're going to suss you out. You're going to get your YouTube clip. You're still going to be a sad excuse for an existence, while the rest of us are trying to figure out whether or not these claims are true. If you don't care about God stuff, go away. It's not, but if you're a genuine believer, if you're a Christian and you believe in your obligation under 1 Peter 3:15 to give the reason for the faith that's within you, then you should call. And if you're a genuine Christian who doesn't think that people like Sam represent you well, because I'm not convinced Sam's even a Christian. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam isn't just another atheist prank caller. I don't saddle all of Christianity with people like Sam. But if you are sitting there as a theist, as a Christian, as a Hindu, as a Muslim, as a Hare Krishna, and listening to what these people are coming up with when we say, hey, what's your reason for believing? Well, my reason for believing is exactly the same as your reason for not believing. Fundamentally, you don't know how to argue. You don't understand evidence. You don't even understand the burden of proof. You don't even understand what it means to accept a proposition. And you couldn't define the word belief without using the word belief. Bring your A game, but at least be sincere. I would rather talk to some of the most uneducated, uninformed theists on the planet who are sincere in presenting what they believe than another smug, let me get my fucking voice on the air prank caller. It's not worth my time. Oh, look, we got Matt, we triggered him. We got him to make a speech about this. Yes, you did. I'm not triggered. I'm not panicked. I'm trying to make sure that the audience who's sitting here, the thousands of people who watch this live and the hundreds of thousands who are going to watch it in the coming weeks aren't embarrassed for all of us at the quality of conversation that is happening, because theists are either afraid to call or cannot be honest, or worse, the atheists have decided to just sit here and be little shits. I have zero interest in that. I got better things to do with my Sunday.
Right. And of course, we hope that the latter isn't true, right? We're certainly hoping that, our fellow atheists aren't doing stuff like this. Of course, we don't speak for all atheists. And I think that is exactly where Sam was very disingenuous. We don't try to presume that we can always think what other people are thinking, or that we know what other people are thinking, especially like you said, Matt, when he's trying to say that, when someone is trying to say that, well, the same reasons why I believe is the same reason why you don't. Certainly that isn't the case. I'm not saying that all atheists come to the same or decision to not believe the same way, but usually it is rooted in either an evidence or lack thereof. So there usually tends to be a more informed process in that. And certainly there are believers who make informed decisions, whether it is about God or not. But certainly, yeah, please don't be dishonest or disingenuous. And that's exactly what the caller was doing.
Yeah. Let me get a couple of announcements out of the way, and then we'll go on to more callers, because we do have other people. Do have other theists on the line who are wanting to do what Sam epically failed at. And so, first of all, if you're looking to support the show, the first thing you could do to support this show is to reach out to other people who might have views that are different from ours, whether they be theist or otherwise, to get them to call in and participate in the show. That's what the show lives off of. Also, participating in the chat's a good idea. But if you want some actual merchandise, you can get your Atheist Experience swag at tiny.cc/merchaca. All that stuff's available there. You can also become a member on the YouTube channel. If you're looking at the YouTube channel now, for $1 a month or so, you can get custom emojis and get out of slow mode. There's also directly below the chat right now is a donation link that will link directly to us. Don't pass go. Google and YouTube don't take any cut of it. And in addition to that, and becoming a member on the channel, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/The Atheist Experience. There are other ways, though, apart from contributing money or buying things, that you can participate, not the least of which is drumming up callers and letting, if you're sitting there going, man, I would never be good at, arguing with them, but I know they're wrong somehow. Maybe get your pastor to do it. Get your pastor to call in. Anybody who tries to claim that they don't get a fair shake on this show, that's something that I've got something we can deal with later on. But there are a couple Facebook groups we like to promote. The first is the Atheist Experience fan Facebook page, or the Atheist Experience fan group, AXPFG. And then there's the Atheist Experience private fan group, which is XPPFG. It's so secret, we tell you about it every single week. So if you've had trouble finding it, I don't know what to tell you. And for those who are looking for a community, and in this time of pandemics and problems, we're not able to be the same type of community that we had in the past. We can't all get together and have dinner after the show and hang out at the library. But there are ways that we're trying to make sure that we're continuing to support that. There's an unofficial Atheist Experience Discord server. Sometimes after the shows are over, we get together and hang out there. I will not be able to do that today because I have another commitment. But there are people there you can have conversations with and interact with, and it is a strong community. And I think you'd be amazed at you may end up in better conversations there than you're ever going to do in not only a YouTube chat, but maybe even by calling in. We have other callers. Let's see if we can do better. Let's all try to do better. I have Jamie. Pronouns are she and her in Colorado. Jamie is a witness of God's presence. So welcome, Jamie. How can you, tell us what you're thinking.
Hi, Matthew. Hi, Mandy. Thanks for allowing me to be on your show. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Hi. Yeah, so, I'm a witness of God's presence. I had an experience with God several years ago, and if I captured it all on camera. So I have photographs of my experience
interesting.
in which I walked with God for 7 minutes.
Okay. So are these still pictures? Is this film footage?
Oh, it's just a camera, like a 35 millimeter camera, and it was a really fascinating thing.
Okay, but I asked if it was still footage or film, like motion picture.
Oh no, it's not film. No, it's still.
So what appears in the pictures?
The face of God.
Okay. Do you mind emailing it to the show?
Well, I was actually wanting to sit down with Matthew if he on a day that we could both get together, and then I just thought maybe we could have a conversation about it, and then we could do a little Zoom meeting, and then he can see for himself. I am writing a book about it, so because I was really to share it with the world.
Is it okay for you to just give a brief description of the God that you captured in your images?
Yeah, tell us the story.
Yeah.
I may or may not. I'm not going to make any promises yet, Jamie, because I've got questions. But I appreciate you. I may be very, very happy to sit down and do a Zoom meeting, discuss this or not. But tell us what happened and how did you know you were having an experience with God? How do you know that you have photographs of God, that kind of thing? Because right now it's just, obviously we barely started talking and it's just vague claims. So I want to know more about what happened and how you know what happened.
Yeah, sure. So, so I, you know how Jesus says that the kingdom of God is within you. So there's ways for us to go within inside ourselves to find truth. And, I was kind of going through a hard time in my life and just wanting to work on myself and feel better about life. And so I kind of just started an inside journey of myself and started a conversation with God. And through that experience, it just opened up a lot of doors and passageways. And one day I was just like feeling the presence of God within me and all around me. And it was really prolific. I just felt like God was in the room with me. And I asked God, I'm like, God, can I have a picture of you? Like, I just asked out loud, like, I'd love to, have a picture of you. And I went outside and I started taking pictures, and because I was feeling the presence. And I came back inside and I looked at the photographs, and I didn't see glory. I didn't see anything spectacular at all. But there was something in that photograph which was revealing. But 13 days later, after I had that experience, I was working and I saw a cloud outside, and I had a feeling about this cloud, and it was just intuitive. I didn't know. So I grabbed my goats and my dogs, and I wanted to investigate it. I wanted to I had a feeling, and I didn't really understand. But so I went out, I grabbed my camera and I went out, and I just was observing the cloud. And as I was observing this cloud, I was walking with it, and I realized at some point that it was observing me too. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. And, I work outside every day in the elements, and I'm just really in tune with nature. But I just felt like this was a totally different experience than anything. And I realized as I was looking at it, I was like, oh my God, that's God. And all the while I was just taking photographs of this cloud. And it was really, really stunning. And I don't know why I did the things that I did, but I called upon the angels, and all these lights started to descend into the sky. And I have photographs of all this. It's really quite stunning. And the cloud was not in a shape that my mind could perceive it was just kind of, it was a cloud, but it was changing shape and form. And I was looking up at it, and, it's kind of interesting. I had just, and I know this story is going to sound really absurd and crazy, and if I heard it, I probably wouldn't believe it. But you can see the evidence, and
well, that's to be seen. So here's I have loads and loads of questions, because you say that you felt God was in the room with you. I don't know what that feels like, and I don't know how you would prove either way that you're feeling that God was in the room with you, was actually God in the room with you versus you just being convinced of something. And similarly, the same thing applies when you talk about you realize that the cloud was observing you too. I don't know how you can demonstrate that. You certainly can't demonstrate it with a picture. And hang on.
Yeah,
And
you'll see it.
hang on.
Hold on there, Jamie.
And so you have a bunch of pictures of a cloud, which you've also said is the face of God, despite the fact that the Bible, I mean, are we talking about the God of the Bible? Because the Bible says that no man has seen the face of God.
Well, I would. I think that's kind of a difficult question. What was revealed to me was the Trinitarian God. But
Did you just say a totalitarian God?
I think she said Trinitarian.
Oh, Trinitarian. Okay.
So are you saying it may not be the God of the Bible?
It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, this God is pure love, and it's the God that I believe in.
Okay, so first of all, hang on. I'm trying to get an answer. Are we talking about the God of the Bible or some other God?
We're talking about the Father, the Son, and
that's not an answer to my question. If you say that you believe in a Trinitarian God and there's a Father, a Son, and a Holy Spirit, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the biblical God. So are you saying it is the biblical God or it's not?
Well, I don't know how to answer that question, Matthew, because there's a lot of things.
It's a simple yes or no. Honestly, it's a simple yes or no.
Well, I would say that there are profound truths in the Holy Bible, and I don't believe everything in it. But I would say that, it is representative of what that God would be like, yes.
Jamie, you're calling in to tell a story of how you think God revealed himself to you in such a way that you have pictures, and you can't tell me if it's the God of the Bible or not. Why wouldn't God make anything clear to you so that you could answer questions about this?
Well, I would say that, if I could tell you a little bit more about my story, I think that would be helpful.
I don't know. No. So here's the thing.
I would say
it seems like if there is a God, he's punking you. He's managed to convince you of something, give you absolutely no information that you could use to present any answer to any reasonable question. Like, how can we know what the pictures represent? How do we know that this is God? Because hang on, I'm not done talking, Jamie. I let you talk for a long time, Jamie, and I took notes. Now, if you in fact were in conversation with or in Congress with the God of the universe, and he did not prepare you to answer questions like this, you should go ask why.
No, I would say that I'm pretty well prepared. It's just I've heard you.
You're not.
Times that
You're not. You can't even tell me whether or not this is the biblical God. That would be one of the most important things.
The biblical God is I am.
Yeah, I don't think you know anything about the biblical God other than I am and this other thing, and that's why you're trying to avoid it. So
right.
Are you now before when you said it was hard to answer, and now you're saying it is the biblical God, it's I am. So are you sure about that? Were you just lying before?
I'm absolutely sure about that is the I am. That I can tell you, and I can show you how that is true.
You're saying here right now that you can show us that the God that you believe was in your images and your pictures is true, and you can demonstrate that. You can demonstrate that beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes, I absolutely can.
Cool. How?
Well, I can show you the photographs.
The photographs don't prove that a God exists. Have you not seen? So first of all, even if you have something that's unexplained or that looks miraculous or that looks wonderful, how do you prove that that's a God?
Because he's made in, because we, you know, if you look at scripture and it says that we're made in the image and likeness of God, you'll see how we are made in the image and likeness of God.
I'm sorry, but if I were to take what you just said and put it in the form of a logical argument, it's not possible.
Yeah.
You're basically saying the Bible says we're made in the image of God. I took pictures of clouds, which I view as in the image of God. Therefore, it's God. That does not follow. That is a logically flawed argument. How can you demonstrate that what you have a picture of is in fact a God?
Because you can see the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
I don't know what that
No,
means. And
you
there's
j-
nothing, there's
yeah.
literally no photograph that could possibly exist, which in and of itself could demonstrate that it is a photograph of a God.
Also, you said that according to what you believe, according to the Bible, that we were made in God's image. So why would this being not present itself in that very same image? Why would it be a cloud of
Yeah,
all
and why
things?
would it be a cloud that you yourself said your mind could not comprehend and didn't even recognize was a face at first?
Well, because it hadn't formed itself into a shape yet, but it did form itself.
I've seen
How-
lots of images in clouds. That is something that our mind does, seeing things in clouds. There's no image of anything in any cloud ever that could, on its own, prove that a God exists. So what else do you have?
And also, how long ago was this experience that you say you had? How long ago was this?
Well, this experience happened in 2015. I emailed Matthew about it, and I said 2016, but I got that date wrong.
And has it replicated itself? Has this God presented itself to you in the same way, or the same manner as it did in 2015 or 2016?
I mean, I see God all the time. Like after you have this kind of, like, there's nowhere where I don't see God. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to discount, because you said that you were at a low point in your life, or you've had some traumatic experiences, correct?
No, I mean, that's just like the beginning of me, like wanting to like discover who I am and go into myself and these things. And yeah.
Right. So I don't want to discount that, because whatever trauma is real to you, it's understandable. However, based on what you're telling us, it still does not demonstrate that an actual God exists. Even if you believe that to be true, that just does not qualify as evidence of a God, especially if the experience did not replicate itself.
So I tell you what we'll do. Jamie, because you want to share more. I'm going to put you back in the queue, and you're going to email me, because you said you've emailed me before, a picture.
Yes.
Right now, while we're still in the air, and we're going to take another call. And if I get that picture, I'll pull you back out of the queue, and we'll talk about it, and you can share more.
Well, Matthew, I have to explain some more before I send you the photograph.
No, you don't. No, you
No.
absolutely don't. And my preferred name is Matt, but
Sorry.
that's fine. I'm just letting you know. It's not like I get mad when somebody calls me Matthew. My mom did it for years. It's probably the reason why I prefer Matt. But we don't need to hear more, because you could actually have a picture of God, and there would be no way for you to prove it at all. But if you are, you say this happened in 2015 and that you'd emailed me about it before.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's 6 years ago that you saw something in a cloud, and for 7 minutes you walked with God, is what you said, and you took pictures. And then you still, at the beginning, when I first asked whether or not it was a biblical God, that was a difficult question to answer, but now it is. I'm going to put you back on hold. You're going to email me a picture so that we know what you're talking about, and then I'll let you share more. But I'm not going to waste more of anybody else's time on something that couldn't possibly demonstrate the truth of what you're saying. Okay. Well, I clicked return to queue. I think we're there. Hey, I got more announcements. It's incredibly frustrating because I'm not I have no way of saying, oh, you're wrong about whether you saw your God, but that doesn't mean there's any way for her to demonstrate that she's right about seeing a God. And I would think, how bizarre is it to have an experience where you're convinced that you saw God and have pictures of God, and then 6 years later, you're calling in to a show to say, oh, I've got evidence of God. I've been in God's presence. And then when the questions are asked, it becomes clear you couldn't demonstrate that. How could a picture of God prove God any more than a picture of a UFO on its own could prove a UFO? Sorry, an alien spacecraft, I would say.
And certainly the longer the explanation or the lead into what these pictures mean, just could imply or demonstrate that we see that that the person really doesn't know or isn't really clear that that they're convinced or that it was an actual God. So I mean, yeah.
There's a bunch of calls left, and so
All right.
I can't. I didn't want to keep going because I'm not convinced that's going to get anywhere.
Yeah,
But
right.
But if it is, I'd like to give her a shot. But there's a whole bunch more theist callers. I want to get through the last of the announcements real quickly here. In addition to the Facebook groups that we already mentioned, there's also an atheist versus theist debates group that you can go to if you're looking for more conversations like that. If you have what you think is evidence for God, or you're the type of person who wants to get in on, and hey, hang on, how do we tell whether or not this is evidence for God? There's a group like that where you can interact. In addition, the atheist community of Austin has developed essentially the Atheist Experience Network, which is a network of a ton of shows, not just this show, which you're watching right now, and Talk Heathen, which airs on Sunday mornings, but Nonprofits, which airs on Sundays between the two shows. Some might even call it the flagship show of the Atheist Experience Network or the Atheist Community of Austin. That airs in between at 3 p.m. with new hosts and new segments on a regular basis, filling up your Sunday. But there's also Truth Wanted and Psychosexuality and so much more. By the way, I heard, I don't know if Nonprofits crossed the 10,000 subs mark or was right at the 10,000.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
It's really close if it hasn't crossed already. And if you weren't familiar about these other shows and you wanted that information, your one-stop destination for all of our shows in podcast form is tiny.cc/AEN podcasts, plural. That URL will take you so that you can learn about all the shows that we're doing and what's coming up as well. And the whole reason those shows exist, the reason we have callers that we can actually talk to today, is because there's a group of people who work tirelessly behind the scenes who were here pretty much all day and were ready, sending me links, an hour before we went show. That's the crew. And I can't imagine a finer group of people. Well, I can imagine a finer group of people, but I'm happy we've got the ones we've got. It might be difficult to come up with finer people.
Yes, I absolutely love the.
We should. What was it? Katie said we should get more talented hosts. Well done. I've got a bunch of callers waiting here, and let's see. We've got GB in Texas. Welcome. You had a question for me and/or Mandisa.
Matt and Mandisa, man, my two favorite people on this show at the moment.
Sweet.
I'm really glad to talk
Hello.
to you guys. So my name is actually Sahin. I normally call under the name Sahin, but I wanted to put my Discord handle on here because I wanted to say thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. I know you didn't create the Atheist Experience, but you've undoubtedly contributed to the culture that it got to the point that it is, to the point where there's a Discord now where I have met some of the most amazing people and have encountered some of the best arguments that have really, made me think.
Well,
I mean,
let's thank the people that put the Discord together and skip past this to the actual point of the call, because nobody would want to watch a show where all people did was call up and talk about how awesome we are.
Okay, you're right. All right. Okay. All right. Spotlight's down. So the question was actually to a claim that you made earlier. If I remember correctly, I mean, if I'm quoting you correctly, you said that there is a topic more important than the discussion of God. Why would you make that claim? Why do you think that God is the most important discussion or the most important subject to be discussed?
What I tend to say is, if it's true, it's the most important fact that anybody could learn. And while I admit that there is a bias there towards Abrahamic religions or religions where there's some sort of soteriology, some sort of afterlife, that's where it comes from. If in fact there's a God that is a deistic God, okay, that's probably not the most important fact, because that's a fact you could never learn anyway. Deistic gods are non-demonstrable. They don't intervene in reality in any detectable way, so their existence is identical to their non-existence. But where, for those propositions like Christianity and others, where there's a God that is expecting you to do something, and the disposition of your afterlife is based on what you do and don't accept, or how you act, nothing could be more important than that.
If I may chime in,
And do you have any thoughts on it?
well, I think there is a basis for a discussion, because many people base what they consider their morals and actions around their belief in gods. If you look historically, there have been a number of acts, many of which have been atrocious, in the name of their gods, and there have been laws created. There have been, there has been so much um, actions that we can see that have been, implemented or enacted in the name of this God that has no basis in evidence, or that has not been proven demonstrably at this point. So it is a very important discussion about why people believe and what gods they believe in, and why they are making the decisions that they do, why they are indoctrinating their children into this belief, and why why so many things occur as a result of that. So there are actually some, not, I wouldn't say just consequences, but there are actually things that have resulted from these beliefs. And so it is an important discussion that we must have.
Yeah, as long as people are voting and legislating on behalf of their belief in these gods, it becomes the most important thing. And when it is used as the underlying primary objection to countless political footballs, it's not just each one of those political footballs is going to be important, but considering how many of them, like, for example, abortion, trans rights,
Right.
etc., those things are deeply rooted in people's religious beliefs. So having the discussions about God and about belief in God, I can't think of anything could be much more important generally. But when you add in the notion that this life is finite, but they're claiming there's an afterlife which is infinite, then the discussion of that is infinitely more important than anything that could happen in this life, which is why the Bible says this life is like dirty rags.
Yeah. Guys, I mean, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You answered my question honestly, and that's all I will say, because, as a Christian, whenever I hear anything that advocates towards the discussion of God, I get excited. So thank you guys for your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for calling.
Hey, look, we had a conversation with a theist that didn't result in yelling or hanging up or, traps or, here's a question leading you down a rim. It's just, hey, here's the question. Here's what we think. It's almost like we've done this before. It appears that we've lost Jamie.
Yeah, I don't want to, I don't want to ridicule Jamie on the air,
Yep.
but I think we kind of lost Jamie during that conversation.
That may be. And I don't want to make assumptions, because everybody's
Right.
life is different. But there are people who are genuinely convinced of things, and then they're not able to
Exactly.
present
Right. They're not
evidence.
able to explain them. Right. You don't
But
get to make that assertion, especially if you can't really explain it.
yep. So we have next in New Mexico, Cathy, who's not sure that my approach to speaking to theists is the best. Cool. So Cathy will be the 45,000th caller with this particular point. Let's see if we can address it. Welcome, Cathy.
Hello.
Hi.
How you guys doing?
Good.
We're doing pretty well.
Okay. Well, I do want to applaud you, Matt, because I think that the conversation you had prior with that theist was very respectful, and I respect that 100%.
And I would argue that all of mine are, until the theist refuses to hold up their side of the argument. You will not find a single conversation in the entire history of 16 years that I've done this show that has started off with me being rude to someone, or yelling at someone, or anything at all like that. What it starts with is me asking questions, and whether or not someone can honestly answer those questions or have a conversation Well, how they get responded kind of depends on the conversation and my mood. But what's the? I don't know. You have something specific you wanted to address?
Yes. I don't. Just want to make this clear. I don't dislike you personally. I think you're well reasoned. I'm not trying to call it an attack to you. I'm just talking about the beliefs. It's not personal. I kind of feel like you strawman a lot of religious arguments to say things that basically they aren't trying to say. Like
I'm going to need you to demonstrate any time where I have strawmanned a religious argument. Give me one example.
Okay. Yes. The previous caller, what was her name? Jamie. Yes, I feel like you kind of asserted that she was a liar just based on your own ideas of how she must be lying because I don't believe there's a God.
Okay, so I think I'm going to challenge you, Cathy, to rewind, because at no point do I feel that I called her a liar. But even if I did, calling someone a liar or saying that you don't believe them is not a straw man. I'm not setting up a weak version of her argument. What about her case do you feel was strong that I made weaker by propping up a straw man?
Well, I mean, you didn't let her, when she wanted to clarify on the photos, you just kind of said, oh yeah, it's just emails to be with no context.
Cathy, what part of her argument do you feel was strong that I intentionally weakened with a straw man?
Well, the word of God stuff. I mean, she was talking about how she saw the pictures, she deemed to be God. And I'm saying, I feel...
Cathy, I lived through the call, and I understand that there's no way that a photo could demonstrate the truth of a God claim. What claim, what position, what argument of hers do you feel was strong that I then weakened by presenting a straw man version of it? If you're going to accuse me of straw manning, you'd better know what straw manning is, and you'd better be able to provide evidence for it. Otherwise, you might as well just be saying, I didn't like the way you did it, or I thought it was mean. But if you say I straw man somebody, that is a logical fallacy on my part, and you need to be able to demonstrate that. Otherwise, you should retract it and apologize.
Well, I didn't. I was saying that's how I perceived it, how you approached it.
Okay, Cathy, I am completely disinterested in how you perceive things if your response to perceiving things is to make accusations that are unfounded, that you cannot support with evidence. Why would anybody care what your view is if you're going to say, you might as well say, I get the impression that you kill people on the weekend. I can't prove it. If you're going to accuse me of something, straw man or otherwise, make your case.
Well, I was making the case in a literal sense. You just don't. I feel like you don't rely on it being like reliable. You think it's because it's related to God. That I don't have to listen to anything. You have to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cathy, but we're not here to listen to all your baggage that gives you false assumptions about what I'm doing. If you think I'm strong manning, you can make a case that I'm strong manning. If you think I'm just dismissing God because it's God, well, that's like your opinion. But you need to make an argument. And if you called in to say that you're not sure that my method is the best, well, are you a theist or an atheist?
I'm a theist, but I believe that you're keeping in your basement.
Another prank caller. Cathy, thank you so much. See, this is the path we go down. You guys are not nearly as clever as you think you are. And so when you make accusations about me and my tone, and then I sit here and calmly expose you for what you are, that's where we get to the bullshit claims of you saying the thing that I'm not going to repeat, because you know what's going to happen? I can pretty much guarantee you Greg is going to cut out that little bit. And then you know what's going to happen? There's going to be a call clip on YouTube of me making you look foolish, making you look silly with your claim, and your little, let me get my Baba Booey in at the end. It won't fucking exist.
And then adding to your fan club, Matt.
Thank you for your help. Hey, actually, I'm going to put you back in the queue, Hamid. We're going to get to you in just a second. I want to make sure that we do things right. You know what might happen? I'll tell you what might happen. What might happen is that something about Cathy's call might end up in a promo clip for the show, showing what kind of ridiculous, dishonest people we get and how ultimately their "I think you keep blah, 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 blah" type of crap doesn't do anything and doesn't get anywhere. Anyway.
As if the idea of like talking meat just slapping against each other is not like inherently weird and gross and silly and fun and beautiful and sexy.
Hey, you may get in a plane crash in the Himalayas, and you might have to eat your friend, but like you wouldn't want to eat your friend every day. Like that doesn't mean that's reasonable for you to go around eating your friends all the time.
So we originally had a 4-up today, but unfortunately I murdered our 4th host in cold blood right before the show, so it's only the 3 of us today.
Yes, so I will say that if this is supposed to be God's love, then y'all can keep it.
I would believe that he existed, and I would be, instead of doing the Atheist Experience, I would be doing the God is a piece of experience, explaining how I believe that this God exists and how neither me nor anyone else should worship him, despite the consequences. Gosh, I like the clips of what everybody might have missed over the week so much.
Yeah, and there were 2 people in there who looked very familiar.
I know.
From last week's shows.
That's because you did Talk Heathen last week, and I did the Atheist Experience last week because, you know, I'm not good enough to do Talk Heathen yet.
I'm sure that's not true.
I hope we get other callers who are in fact sincere in their beliefs. There's little we can do. I mean, if you think you're clever because you managed to get past a call screener whose genuine job is to try to find people whose beliefs would make for a good conversation, and you call in to talk about how, oh, I think Matt's doing it wrong. Cool. I'm happy to take those calls. And you know why I'm happy to take those calls? It's because I've never claimed to always be doing it right. I've never claimed that there's one way to do this. I've never claimed that I'm doing it best or anything else. And yet there are people out there like, oh, Matt won't listen to criticism. Matt won't address any objections against him. And yet I'll do it live. And then it turns out they're not even that sincere.
Right.
So we have in the UK, Hamid, and thank you so much for waiting and your patience and putting you back on hold. How are you, sir?
Hi, yeah, good. Thank you. Hi, Matt. Hi, Mandisa.
Hello.
It's really good to be on the show. Yeah.
It says here that you've deconverted and then converted back to Islam, and you feel that you have information that will help us see the truth. So I appreciate that. Help us out.
I'm not sure if I put it that way, but basically I wanted to give you guys my experience and the journey I went through, and then maybe you can decide for yourself. Make up your own mind and see what that was.
I'd like to make an agreement real quick when we start this, Hamid, because there are a lot of other people waiting on hold. I don't really want a whole life story, so I'm probably going to interrupt it at some point to ask questions for clarification about the points that we do find interesting. But yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just quickly. So basically, around when I was born in a Muslim family, but well, yeah. I didn't really. I was just with my mom and with my sister, so my dad wasn't there, and I was the only man in the house in my own culture. So it's not really. So I had to basically grow on my own sort of thing, and I wasn't particularly religious. Around 14, maybe I started praying for a year or something, and then fasting. But then when I came to Germany from the Islamic countries I was living, I basically, after a couple of years, I stopped completely anything religious. And when I came to UK after like a few years, I basically was watching your show, Atheist Experience, following Richard Dawkins and all the atheists. And basically, I was very logical and tried to find, try to make sense through logic, everything. So that eventually ended up me completely calling myself an atheist and becoming an atheist. And then after few more years, around when I was 27 or something, I got more into, I was literally reading books every day, but then I started getting into philosophy. From scientific books, I started reading philosophy and looking into Hinduism, Buddhism, and all these sort of philosophical concepts. And then at some point with my friends, as I was doing that, I was very argumentative as well. I argumented with everybody. I watched your shows and everything. And then eventually what happened to me, that when I was going back to, I wasn't even looking at Quran, to be honest, because I couldn't understand it at all. So, and then I was looking at Bible most of the times. And then I was looking at it, and then it started to make sense, like out of nowhere. Like I was reading some sentences, and then the ideas that came from Hinduism and Buddhism and stuff like that, philosophy, and then it just all of a sudden the sentences made sense. Like I could know what that meant, for example. And then
so this is where I want to jump in, because you talked about how you used to use logic. Have you stopped using logic? Did you stop valuing logic?
No. The logic is my only thing. Like I cannot live.
I just want to make sure, because so when you say something in past tense, like I used to be logical, and then I started looking at philosophy, Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. But you also said that you weren't looking at the Quran, mostly the Bible, but it just all of a sudden started making sense. How can something start to make sense if you're not looking at it? But I think that if something truly makes sense, like if at some point I didn't understand calculus at all, like it was just didn't make any sense at all. And at some point, somebody taught me just enough. I'm not well versed in calculus. Let me make that clear. But somebody managed to explain it to me in a way where I could understand and perhaps describe to someone else what calculus was for, what sort of calculations we were doing, that it was all about rate of change. And so if you say that you're starting to look at the Quran and it now makes sense, I would think that you would be able to explain to someone.
Actually, Matt, I'm sorry. I'm
Go ahead.
interjecting. Hamid said that he actually started reading the Bible and it made sense. So, did you even read the Quran at all?
No, at that time I wasn't reading the Quran. I was only reading the Bible. Well, the Bible started making sense. Loads of things.
So you eventually began to read the Quran as well, or
I
in
guess
addition?
all I'm looking for is an example of something that what I'm looking for, Hamid, and this can be really straightforward. Give me an example of something that didn't used to make sense that now makes sense to you now, because you should be able to explain that fairly clearly.
So I think, the most important thing, I think it was that eventually the concept of God, who God is, what God is, or that it's out there, there's something that is, it's that every scripture or every book, religious book is trying to explain. And these philosophies also trying to explain. Even poets are trying to explain, or say it in the poetry. Is eventually that started making sense.
I mean, I got to stop there, because so I asked you to give an example of something that didn't used to make sense but now makes sense, and you said the concept of God. And so your explanation of what God is something out there, something every scripture and every book is trying to explain. I already understand God at that conceptual level, that religions continue to try to describe something that's out there. So I don't understand why that wouldn't have made sense, that gods are men's attempts at explaining the unknown. What is it that made sense to the standpoint? Okay, go ahead.
No, it's not that I was sort of like looking what the unknown is. I was basically the unknown is the unknown, right? Until it becomes known. So that's what it's when the unknown became known. That's when I understood it. Does that make sense?
I'm asking you, Hamid, for an example. So if I tell you I didn't used to understand calculus, but now I understand it, and here's what I understand it to be, can you do that?
I don't, Matt. I think what it is you are trying to ask me to prove you God.
No, sir. Please listen to what I'm actually asking you and stop making assumptions about what you think I'm doing. All I'm saying is you said that this stuff in the Bible didn't used to make sense, and now it makes sense. And I'm saying if it makes sense, you should be able to explain to me what you now understand to be the case and what you didn't understand to be the case before. That's it. I'm not asking you to prove God. I don't think you can. I'm not asking you to present evidence. That's the next step. I'm trying to get you to describe, not because, so let me back up for half a second here. You went from not believing something to believing something. I'm going to ask you in a little bit what actual evidence you have for that belief, for the proposition that belief is true. That is a completely secondary discussion. All I'm interested right now is you said stuff in the Bible didn't make sense, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it starts making sense, and I want an example of that. Why is that so difficult? Please stop reading into it and either give me an example or say you can't.
No, I can't, because that's I can't give you an example.
Then I don't know how to have a conversation with you, because if I tell you there used to be things that didn't make sense to me and now they make sense, and you said, like what? I can give you an example.
Okay, so I don't think that you understand what I'm saying. I think
I know that's what you think.
I completely understand what you're saying.
I'm asking you, okay, Hamid, let me make this as simple as possible. Are there things in the Bible that you did not used to understand, but you understand now?
It's God itself. It did
why will you not answer the question that I'm asking you? I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. Please listen. Are there things in the Bible, sentences, that did not make sense to you previously and do make sense to you now?
Okay, for example, okay, I think I get you. So you're saying, for example...
that is a yes or no question, Hamid. I'm going to ask it again, and if you don't say yes or no, we're done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you are saying there are things in the Bible that didn't used to make sense to you, but that do make sense to you now. Yes.
Okay.
Right?
It was in Bible, because I didn't finish my story. I said, and then at the end, I went to...
Hamid, I don't know what to do. I can't get you to answer the question and listen to me. So don't interrupt. For clarity, I know this is a repetition because I think you said yes, but for clarity, you are saying there are sentences in the Bible that did not used to make sense to you, but do make sense to you now, yes or no?
Can I a little bit more detail? Am I allowed to give a little bit more detail about to get to the end?
Well, apparently you're not going to answer the question first,
I don't know why you won't answer the question that you literally just answered 30 seconds ago, when all I'm doing is getting clarity.
Okay,
and literally, if I rewound this, the words that came out of your mouth was that I wasn't even reading the Quran. I wrote this down. These are my notes. I wasn't even looking at the Quran much at that time, mostly the Bible. And there were sentences in there that started to make sense out of nowhere. That's what I wrote down. And so I'm asking you, are there sentences in the Bible that did not previously make sense to you that make sense now, yes or no?
Yes, I think in the Bible, it says that God is everywhere. The same as in
Jesus Christ. The follow-up question is, can you give me an example of one of those sentences?
Okay, God is everywhere. And I'm just hoping that this exists in Bible, because I don't know.
Wait, what? Wait a minute.
So he's saying the sentence, God is everywhere. He hopes it's in the Bible because he wants to use that as an example of something he didn't used to understand, but currently understands. Correct?
Sorry, because
Hamid, if you would stop talking over me, I'm doing you the best fucking favor anyone's ever going to do for you.
Okay.
So the sentence "God is everywhere" is that in the Bible or isn't it? You just said you hope it's in the Bible.
I'm not a Christian. I'm a Muslim. I can say that it's definitely in the Quran.
Hamid, stop talking and listen to me. I do not think you're a Christian. Whether you're a Christian or Muslim is irrelevant. You called in to say that there were sentences in the Bible that did not previously make sense to you, which makes sense to you now. I do not care what your religion is. I do not care if you believe in a God. I do not care if you like green eggs and fucking ham. You said there were things in the Bible that didn't make sense to you, but do now. And you're saying that the sentence "God is everywhere" is one of those. Correct?
Yeah, you are correct.
Don't run when nobody's chasing you. I'm doing my best to set you up to be able to give the clearest example of this that you can possibly give. And you're looking for traps or trick questions. You're looking for assumptions and all kinds of stuff. I have been incredibly straightforward. Now, whether or not the sentence "God is everywhere" exists in the Bible, I would agree that the concept that God is everywhere or God is omnipresent exists in the Bible. And so you're saying at some point, whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So if you are aware of that, I was saying that because my memory is not helping me, so that's why. I'm saying, okay, if that's the thing, that's the same concept that exists in Islam, because from Christianity, when I was reading the Bible, I moved on to Quran, right? Because I wanted to get deeper into this, like what makes more and more and more sense, because I wanted to understand the absolute truth eventually, get to the bottom of it.
How do you know the absolute truth is in the Bible or the Quran?
Because I followed my logic, I followed my understanding, I followed these and through the things.
I'm sorry, your phone broke up. I have no idea what any of that said. How do you know that the absolute truth is in the Bible or the Quran?
That's following as these things came back to me every time a light was going on in my head, getting more, I don't know, epiphany or whatever. Then eventually it's the idea or the concept or the reality of God completely became clear to me, and I understood clearly what.
Hamid, whether or not a God concept is clear to you is independent from whether or not that God concept points to anything true. Correct? I thought you said you liked logic.
Right. And what was it? What exactly was it in the Quran that started to make sense to you?
Okay. That the Allah is the absolute.
Oh gosh, we cannot hear.
Yeah, whatever your phone is essentially audio pixelating right now.
Sorry, I'm using Viber. I don't know. I'm trying my best. Yeah.
I know.
Is it bad?
So, Mandisa was asking you, what was it about the Quran that made sense? So, you within the Bible or the Quran, the concept that God is everywhere somehow began to make sense to you. But whether or not something makes sense to you is completely independent from whether or not it's true. Correct?
But here's my argument for that. If my senses are basically for logic, right? Logic only works if
you don't have senses for logic, which is why you're refusing to answer basic questions that expose that. You are overestimating your propensity to use logical reasoning, because all I asked was the fact that something makes sense to you is independent from whether or not it's true. Correct?
Matt, I don't think you understand what logic is.
Hamid, I think you're about to be publicly embarrassed repeatedly by suggesting that I don't know what logic is when I'm asking you a very straightforward question that anybody who knows and understands anything about logic would be able to answer instantly, because whether or not a concept makes sense to me is independent from whether or not the concept points to something that is true. I can have a concept of a unicorn that makes sense to me, but that does not mean that the unicorn exists. I can have multiple God concepts in my head that make sense to me, but that doesn't mean that any of them exist. My conception of something is independent from its actuality. This is an undeniable, basic, simple thing.
Yeah, I was going to explain that, but I think I got interrupted about what sense is, what the logic is, and how when you sense something through correct information, eventually it has to make logical sense. Otherwise, it will not. It will be illogical to your senses.
I'm sorry, Hamid, but you don't seem to understand what logic is. Your senses aren't particularly relevant to this. Your senses may not be pointing you to truth, and logic may not be pointing you to truth. Reasoning is about whether or not a particular thought, a particular argument is consistent with reasoning. Identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, the structure of that's logic. If there is no guarantee that because something you think you sense something, that therefore it must exist. That is a logical fallacy.
Okay, then I think that's where our conversation ends then.
Okay. Did you have any evidence for Islam?
I was basically gonna argue about it, like that's the way we are doing right now. But I think if you're gonna do this, then it's gonna take a bit more time. I don't know if you still want to go on about it, but
I don't know. It's up to Mandisa.
No, the short answer seems to be no. So, I mean, if we have other callers that can actually demonstrate good evidence that their God exists, then let's go for it.
Yeah, because these are simple, straightforward questions I'm asking. Like, does the fact that you have a concept of something mean that it's true? And the answer is no.
No.
Anybody who even hesitates to give a no answer there is probably engaged in a little bit of woo thinking or bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anyway,
thanks. I don't know.
It's amazing what people perceive atheism to be, and that it's just always about what they consider logical, what they consider to be logical.
Yep. This will be an interesting question, because while it's addressed to me, I'm interested in hearing kind of what both of us think about it, although I can't imagine we're too far apart. But Paul, who's a pandeist, wants to know, has questions about spirit mediumship and rationality. So welcome, Paul.
Hey, Matt Mandisa. It's great to talk with you.
Hi.
Hi. So, dealing with religion and spiritualism on an anthropological level, there's a kind of a polarity between the practices of focused meditation and then trance mediumship, and I see the trance mediumship element or mystic practice come up again and again. I'm wondering if you feel like people can engage in psychologically warping. Well, I'm going to say warping. That's a negative connotation. Psychologically, psychoactive practices, like spirit mediumship, without having to buy into woo or being irresponsibly irrational.
Are you saying how crazy are spirit mediums?
Well, no, I've known quite a few spirit mediums, and I've seen a range of approaches to it, but I'm not sure.
Okay, let me make this really easy, Paul. Let me make this really easy, Paul. I see no good evidence that anything like a spirit or soul exists or could exist. I see no good evidence that anyone who's engaging in mediumship is in any way actually communicating with any non-corporeal mind at all. And that makes it irresponsible. It puts it in the category of pseudoscience. How irresponsible it is and how dangerous it is depends on what they're doing with it. But there's no good reason to think that it's true. Plenty of good reason to think that it's not true. And I don't know what else you would want me to say. As far as I can tell, it's bullshit.
That definition of true, which I hold to as well, and I agree in that hard.
Wow, you were talking through the whole end of that, weren't you? Go ahead.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't at all. I was trying to be very careful not to interrupt you, sir, because I don't want to. Doing your job must be very frustrating, you know. So I just, also being excited. I don't want to nip at you back your heels, but I still did. Sorry. In a Dadaist kind of creative subconscious approach to the union collective unconscious, but no external to a mind, external to a physical mode of transmission of culture. Nothing beyond that kind of Dadaist reaching.
I don't know why you called in to ask about whether or not I think something is rational or dangerously irrational, and then go on to praise it as a Dadaist thing, which is deliberately irrational. It is embracing the irrational.
Yeah, but confinedly so, not in a way that's not.
If you want to go pretend that you're talking to dead people, go for it. But if you want to try to convince somebody else that you're doing it, please fucking stop, because you're not.
Right. And similar to the way the Judeo-Christians, the Judeo-Christian religions work, there doesn't seem to be any really good evidence for it. And so, yes, it would be irresponsible for people to claim that they can either communicate with the dead or bring someone back from the dead simply based on whatever you think you're practicing. And do I think that is there a rational basis for it? No, there isn't.
Yeah. If you're giving someone life advice, if you're sitting around, I have friends who use, for example, tarot cards in their magic acts. I use tarot cards in my magic act, but I don't prop up any woo in the process. I talk about it. Matter of fact, I give kind of a disclaimer at the beginning of it, but I don't require that every magic performer put a disclaimer before it. If you want to have a spooky seance, I have friends who do spooky seance shows, but they're not pretending that anything there is real. Now, if, on the other hand, you are giving people life advice or taking people's money with the promise that you're going to talk to their dead loved ones and other things else, then you are, as far as we can tell, a disgusting ghoul that is preying on people. And until you can demonstrate that what you claim to be doing, you can actually do, you should be practicing this on pain of going to fucking jail from the Bunko Squad.
I don't mean to be splitting hairs. I don't think this is necessarily going to change the prognosis, so to speak. It's a metaphor. But excluding any notion that they're claiming that a given group of mediums is claiming to talk to dead people, but more magical spirits like Merlin.
I have no evidence of anything magical or spirit. You can use whatever fucking bullshit woo term you want, but as long as you're talking about things that aren't demonstrated, my opinion is the same.
Do you think that the people that are going to those Merlin channelers, do you think that they believe in a way that could make this predatory, or do you think that they're looking to engage in fantasy?
Some do, some don't. But if you want to engage in, I can go to medieval times and engage in fantasy. I can go to the Ren Fair and engage in fantasy. I don't need to prop up notions about spirits, souls, dead people, which many people do believe in, which are the cornerstone and hallmarks of many religions, the notion of a soul and an afterlife and whether or not you can reach that. I don't need to give clearance and protection to dangerous, harmful ideas that are propping up religion and dividing us just in the name of fun. I don't find that fun at all.
With that extent, I want to get Mandisa's continued take on this, but I just have one last follow-up question. Would you extend that to being wary of movements like Dadaism or related kind of?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it is totally possible for people to be indulging in fantasy and being predatory at the same time. Which, as if Matt said, if people are doing that, then they are being not just irresponsible, but also very dangerous, and it could be considered criminal.
Yeah, one of the problems is that you get people who are love to view themselves as intelligent. Oh, I'm engaged in this in a Dada-esque sense. I obviously don't think it's real, but there are people who do, and inevitably.
No. So that was my that was my articulation. That wasn't theirs. That was me trying to.
Never mind. I'm done not finishing sentences. Anyway,
sorry, sir.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Hope you got the answer you were looking for. I don't get it. People are like, oh, what do you think about this? Okay, I'll tell you. Yeah, but what about that? Well, okay, I'll tell you. It's really simple. I'm not a stick in the mud. I have lots of fun. I do lots of stuff. I do magic shows. I do fake spiritualist mind reading things. The difference is that I start off by saying, I don't have any psychic or paranormal abilities as far as I can.
Entertainment as well.
Yeah.
We can be entertained by these things. I mean, they can be fun to do, but to take them seriously, and to try to convince people that they should take it seriously, we absolutely have the right to question one's sense of logic and reasoning and where they're coming from.
And I have no problem with cosplay and LARPing, live action role playing. The difference is when some people are LARPing, but aren't aware that they are, or denying that they are,
Right.
Unless you're being filmed and you're trying to, make an interesting movie for somebody, is a problem. All right, we got a couple of calls left and 10 minutes left in the show, and most of these people have been waiting patiently for ages, including, there we go, Luke in Minnesota. Thanks so much for waiting.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. I've been listening to you guys for several months now.
I've been doing it for several months.
You basically
makes sense.
Yeah, I know. So I am an atheist, and I stopped being a theist about 3 years ago. And I basically wanted to ask I've listened to the show for a long time, and I wanted to ask this question because I haven't heard it explained so far, which is, or at least to my satisfaction, which is, why is skepticism, the way you guys presented on your show, sort of the best path to truth? I've heard you talk about, if you have two conflicting truth claims, how do you know what methodology to use to find one is better than the other? And my question is, why should that apply equally to God? I've heard it referred to as maybe special pleading, that God shouldn't have a separate category of thought about him, and we should apply the same methodology to him or her or it. And so, yeah, the reason I am concerned about this question is because when I stopped being a theist, it was not for directly rational reasons. It was because, I came out as gay to my family. I had an interpersonal crisis, and I basically adopted atheism out of choice and necessity. And, part of my insecurity is I don't want to use post-hoc rationalizations to set up my God belief or not accepting of a God belief. So that's my question to you.
Well, so first of all, do you understand that the burden of proof is on the people who are claiming that there is a God and they haven't met it?
Yes. I guess my question, I do understand the burden of proof is for anything you make a positive claim, right? So if you don't accept it, that's not the same as you don't have to prove something. You don't believe
so.
something.
The default position is to begin, for any claim that X exists, the existence needs to be demonstrated, because if you just believe it, then what you end up with is conflicting beliefs. And so you would put yourself in a position where you would have to believe that multiple different gods exist, or multiple different things exist that you don't have any evidence for. This is why we wait for evidence. But when you asked about skepticism is an ideology. It's not a tool set. Skepticism is an ideology that says we're going to use the demonstrably best tools available to understand reality. So when you say, why is skepticism the best path? Because it is. Because you might as well just say, we're going to use the best path, and we're going to call that skepticism. And all it means is, anytime we're evaluating something, we are going to use the methodology that has demonstrated it is most reliable, and so that you can believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, so that you don't get duped and conned.
Yes. Okay. I mean, that makes sense to me. And, I have no objection to it. I think part of my question is also, what is the harm, I guess, or if let's say I come from the assumption that I can't demonstrate a God. I don't believe there's a way to demonstrate a God. I've come to that conclusion already, but let's say I just want to believe something I have no evidence for just because I want to. Is that harmful?
Yes.
It also, to me, if I may, Luke, because you said you came to your identity as an atheist from a traumatic experience or a traumatic journey, there certainly does, I think you might need to further reflect on seeking additional support for that. Because being an atheist doesn't mean that you're just that you're just saying everything skepticism or using all of these big scientific or these big words all the time. I think that's a huge misconception that many believers have. So there you may want to you may want to consider and do more of a deep dive into your journey and the fact that you should just be able to explain that you don't believe any gods exist because there is lack of evidence and that there is no demonstrable proof of any gods.
I want to give you a slight. I wanted to make sure Mandisa got to talk because it's important, and I'm not going to get it all right. But to give you a more robust answer than just yes. First of all, I genuinely have difficulty understanding how anyone could say, is it really harmful for me to believe what I want, irrespective of whether or not I have good reason? That to me is one of the most harmful, asinine questions I've ever heard. I've heard it from many people, so you're not alone. And I'm sure that all of us at some point have felt like that. But the truth is, I don't even think you can. Like, there's a difference between saying, I am convinced this is true, which is what that believes, and I'm going to act like I'm convinced this is true. And so what your question is, hey, why can't I just believe what I want? Well, because you can't. Belief isn't a choice. You don't get to choose what you believe. You're either convinced or you're not. And what you're really doing is saying, I'm going to act as if I'm convinced so that maybe I might fool myself, or perhaps if there is a God, fool that God. But you're not really. You're not really convinced. If you think that belief, it's like, oh, I'm just going to believe that I've got $1 billion. I'm going to believe that I'm the most handsome person on the planet. I am, but I'm going to believe that. See how that works? Nobody should do that. And the thing is, even if you found something like, I'm going to choose to believe that this, actually, let's not use that. I'm going to choose to believe that this pair of glasses is lucky. Now, that comes with consequences. So what a lot of people do is say, okay, well, let me choose to believe something that doesn't come with any consequences. Like, I'm going to choose to name. So I don't know what doesn't come with consequences, because even if you isolate it down to where I believe this set of glasses is magical, but only right now for the next second, and then after that, they're not magical anymore, which means that nothing about my belief is lasting. You still have the belief, which means that you now have a heuristic model in your head, a mechanism by which you evaluate things. That you can say, today, for this instant, I'm not going to rely on evidence. I'm just going to go with what my gut feels or what I prefer. And as long as that model exists in your head, that means that you can not only use it for glasses for 1 second, but you can use it for other things as well. So you either care about whether or not your beliefs are true or you don't. And if you do, then you can't be asking about, well, why can't I just believe what I want? Because first of all, beliefs aren't a choice. And second of all, because you care about what's true and you know more, you understand this stuff better than that. You couldn't possibly say, well, this time I'm just going to believe it. No, you're lying to yourself, which we all do. And this is what we mean by the difference between believing something and believing in belief. There's huge benefits to acting as if you believe, of going to church, of hanging around with people, of, hey, when somebody says, oh, I think that, Isn't it a beautiful world that God's made? And you're like, yes, it is, because now you're talking about positive stuff and you just get to talk about that. And what could possibly be the harm? I'll tell you what the harm is. The harm is you're propping up the exact same beliefs that want to punish you for the fact that you're gay. The Bible doesn't discriminate. People do. People get to cherry pick whatever they want out of whatever holy book they want. They can say, oh, this is in the Bible, so I'm going to believe it. Oh, but this is in the Bible and I'm not. Well, on what grounds do you decide to believe that God made the earth in 6 days out of magic, but that God didn't tell people that if a man lies with another man as he lies with a woman, they've committed an abomination or deserving of death? How do you cherry pick that once you accept that there is a God that could have said it?
Right. And I would say I take a slightly different take. I have a slightly different take on whether, beliefs are a choice or not. I mean, I do think that if you continue to believe in something after you have come to an informed decision or an informed conclusion, it's not a good choice. Certainly it's not, but certainly if you are of sound and of mind, then again you may not necessarily be, but um I just really that is very irresponsible, and I would say in your case to I would say to absolutely reevaluate why you came to that conclusion and whether it was the rational one for yourself.
Where are we at, Luke?
Thank you so much for those thoughts. I think you went into several different avenues that I was about to ask you about, and then you just addressed it before I even said anything. Especially the difference between acting like you believe something and actually believing it.
Yeah.
And then,
by the way, a lot of people seem to think that they could fool a God, which I find laughable. Like if there is a God, and you're like, oh, I'm not really convinced there's a God, but I'm going to act like there is. And I'm like, who do you think you're fooling?
well, I mean, there could, in the realm of possible gods that you could describe, one of them might reward a person who tries without proof.
Yeah, and one of them might reward people who aren't acting gullible, and one of them might reward people who aren't lying about what they believe, and one of them might, how do you tell which one's the right one? Why not just be intellectually honest? And then if there's a God that decides to punish you for being intellectually honest, he's a prick.
Yeah, and that's I think where you and I align. Mike, I guess, is there a way to combine any of those circumstances in such a way where you could try to come up with a belief in a God where you understand that you're not actually believing it, but you act like you believe it and it doesn't cause harm? For example, I choose to believe in, the Loch Ness Monster because I think it makes the world a little more magical, even though I don't think it's there. Or I choose to act like it's there, even though I know I have no reason to believe it,
Okay. Are you asking that as a hypothetical, or are you saying that you are someone who just believes there's a Loch Ness Monster, or acts like you believe in a Loch Ness Monster, even though you don't have good reason?
I mean, as a hypothetical, I don't actually believe in a God, and I don't necessarily have an interest in pretending like
let's just go with that hypothetical.
Like to be able to get along with my family, or the hypothetical.
Sure, I'd like to be able to get along with my family too. And you know what I did? I said this far and no further, and if you want to have a relationship with me, you knock that shit off. And it turns out that they love me just enough to not do the things that were causing the problem, because I wasn't doing anything to cause the problem. I was just living my life and not believing in their God. Now, that's not going to work in every situation, every family, but let's go with the Loch Ness Monster. Mandisa, I now believe in the Loch Ness Monster. What's wrong with that?
Well, why do you believe in the Loch Ness Monster? What is your proof of the Loch Ness Monster?
I just want the world to be more magical, so I thought I would believe in a magical being.
Again, what is can you absolutely demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that the Loch Ness Monster exists?
No, but why should that matter? I just want the world to be more magical.
Well, we don't live in a magical world.
You don't know that. How dare you take away my magic? The underlying reason for wanting to believe in the Loch Ness Monster is to want a world that you even said it yourself, Luke. You want a world that's more magical. Well, tough shit.
Yeah.
The world is exactly as magical as it is or isn't. And if you are desiring a world that seems more magical, that means that you are intentionally setting aside the facts of this reality.
Mm-hmm.
And while I can understand why someone who may be facing a terminal diagnosis may not feel the same way about it I do. I want to know. I know people who don't want to know. I know people who would want to be lied to. But if you have a cancer diagnosis and all your life you've wanted the world to be more magical, so you kind of act like there's fairies and everything else, are your chances greater, or is there a greater chance or a weaker chance that you're going to buy into pseudoscientific magical remedies for your cancer out of desperation over scientific medicine?
Right. Which can also impact the people around you, your families, if you have children. It can also cause you to make very irrational decisions and put finances into something that really and not only has it not been proven to work, but it's ultimately a waste of time, which again affects not just you but others around you, because we don't just exist in this world by ourselves. We don't live in a bubble, no matter how much at times we want to. That's just not the reality.
It would, there's reasons why we shouldn't believe things.
Yeah. Sorry if I have a barking dog in the background.
No problem.
Yeah, I think that back and forth about the Loch Ness Monster helped me kind of understand, even if you tried to invent something that I think has no harm, or that just for the sake of you want to, there's always some kind of reason behind it that could lead to some slippery slope of harm at some point. So why bother?
Mm-hmm.
I think
that part.
I think that we're short-sighted and we assume that things like things that live in our brain, we think they're not going to have an impact. And that's just because we're not really looking that hard at what potential impact there really is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for those thoughts. I think that basically answered my question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke. I appreciate it. And on that note, we have gone over time. And I know I've got a show at 7:00 on the line, and so I'm not going to be able to hang out more. When do we get to do this again?
Anytime that I am not busy or that I definitely want to do this again. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of AXP.
I want to remind everybody again that this coming weekend is the Women of Color. Go ahead.
Yes.
Tell them all about it.
Yeah, Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference. It is physically taking place in Chicago, Illinois. However, right now, at this time, it is only available for online streaming. I appreciate everyone who has registered during this episode. Tell your friends, share it. We love to have lots more people tuning in to hear these wonderful women and hear of the wonderful activism as well as the important subjects that will be discussed during the conference.
Absolutely. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in and watched today. I apologize that I kind of got to run, which means I won't get to hang out in Discord. Genuinely, take a look at the way calls went down. Even when there was a prank caller that tried to have an honest discussion as a theist, or tried to appear that they had an honest discussion as a theist, that went better than most people would expect. And while we had Hamid with difficulties understanding the limits of logic and whether or not there is evidence for this, or whether or not you, just because you have a conception of something or you think you understand something, that it somehow ties to the truth, or it must eventually make truth, or it must be logical with your senses. There's a lot of confusion there, and it may be language related. And so the best thing to do in many of those occasions is to stick a pin in the conversation and say, go off and think about it. I'll go off and think about it. Come back. And so for the people who called today, Hamid and others, apart from the prank callers, call us back. Let us know if you had more thoughts on it. Maybe you refined the way you thought of it. Maybe you called in and you were nervous and didn't necessarily let you get your words out right. Or maybe when you say, Matt, you're just not understanding, maybe you're right. Maybe I wasn't understanding, although there were two of us here who weren't understanding either. But if we can find a new way to explain it, where then we can understand it, then we can actually have a conversation. That's what I want. That's what this show is about. This is not, despite what some people view it as, this is not the let's let silly theists call in and smack them around, rah, rah, rah. That happens, but that's God's fault for not existing. We'll see you next week. Take care of yourself. Be healthy.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.